Hey y'all, it's Diana again with a new segment for Woman Once Removed, My Life Story. Well, since this is Mother's Day weekend, I thought I would do a tribute to my mother. I do have a few photographs that have been uploaded, not a whole lot. This first photograph I want to show you is of my parents. This was taken in 1945, I believe. It was right after the war ended, and my parents looking very beautiful and very young. Yeah, my mother was a very special lady. Uh, she tried her best to be understanding to me. She knew from the beginning that I was different, that I was special. And she knew the reason why, but she never divulged that reason until right before I got ready to go to have my surgery. Not that she had really fought it, but she would not completely condone it for fear that it wound up being something that was a mistake and caused me trouble in the end. So she, until it was over with, she just wouldn't put her total stamp of approval on it. But she did tell me that she thought that her own assumption was that the medicine that the doctors had put her on so that she wouldn't miscarry me, which was disocebesterol, which later on they found out it caused a lot of birth defects, and a lot of the males that were born to these women who took this hormone medication, many of those turned out to have different forms of intersex conditions brought on by those hormones. Uh, some of it transgender in nature. So that medicine did mess up a lot of people, and she knew that it had messed me up too. And but it wasn't until right before I got ready to go that she knew I was absolutely sure that I was not backing out, that she told me what she thought she knew. And it made me feel a lot more sure of my decision. I knew it in my own head, but to see that there was a reason for my particular case, uh, it really took a load off my mind. So my mother and I were close from the time I was a child. She would make my dolls clothes. She would make me costumes to do in my little make-believe things that I would be doing. I loved it best when she would take old draperies and make these ball gowns out of them. I had a mama that would do all this kind of stuff and then hide everything so that my daddy wouldn't know what was going on. It was all behind my daddy's back. Um, Not that she prompted any of this. I was the one that was there begging for her to do these things. And she was loving enough to try to make her child happy. And if it took sewing that child up a ball gown whenever that child was technically male, then she did it. And then she covered for me the best she could. But then as years went on and and I was in my teens, you know, it was a new ball game. You know, it wasn't just something a child wanted to do. This was pre-adult stuff, and you know, you were going to have to learn to act as an adult. And you're a male, you're going to be male. That's all you can be as a male. So, you know, that's when our problems started coming in with my mother, because she was wanting me to have a normal life the best that she knew how. You know, with her background and education, she had no idea. She knew male and she knew female. She knew they were some of those funny people, both men and women, that you know, people who didn't talk about very much. So, um, yeah. So she didn't see any other real alternative but either male or female. And she kept telling me how, you know, because I knew what it was like to be a woman inside, that I would be able to treat a woman so good. That was my mama's trying to rationalize how I could have went on to marry a girl. She didn't realize that how would I be able to have, you know, marital intercourse with this woman. I don't think she was seeing everything through. She was just had a pipe dream that maybe I could do something like that. And a lot of people do now. A lot of people do, and for that very same reason, trying to please family. So a lot of people do that. Now, if I had been able to, maybe I would have been doing it too, because I wanted to please my mama. You know, I wanted everybody to be happy. I didn't purposely want to hurt people with what I had to do. You know, I didn't consider my fault. That's the way I always was. And if anybody knew me back then, they would know that's how I always was. This was my only truth. This is who I am. See, here I am scratching my nose. And I've been fussing about that in other videos. But I have something that, I guess when I get nervous, that my nose itches. And I'm trying to teach myself to do a little bit better. And especially since I'm doing this for my mama, and she would want me to do good. I did love my mama. You know, after surgery, she and my daddy both were so good. They were so good about, you know, including me back into the family. And, you know, they were hard feelings with one of my siblings, my middle brother. He didn't like the idea that I came back into the family. He thought I should have had my surgery, but to have left the family and never come back, as if I had died. And that's the old way of doing things with people like me. Shunning them, putting them up in the attic and not having anything to do with them. Not accepting them publicly. You know, that's just not the way my parents was going to do it. And my grandfather either. We've talked about that in other videos. But this is about my mama. And we had such a close-knit relationship. And that's not to say that we did not fuss and fight. We did. Because my mama was domineering. She wanted things her way. If she wanted me to come visit at a certain time or a certain day, it had to be that way or no other way. And there were times that, you know, we had fights because I was a young adult and I wanted to do my thing my way too, you know. So we had some fights. And there would be times that my daddy would notice that I hadn't called in a certain amount of time, because back then we didn't have cell phones, y'all. Young people, we didn't have cell phones back then, the 70s and the 80s. No. So my dad, but he would realize that I hadn't called in a while, and he'd say, "What have you said to her now?" I know you got her mad. She hadn't called. And you know she's going to be the only one that'll give us as much as a glass of water when the time comes. So he was all for me always being in the picture in case something happened. And of course I was. Whenever my dad passed, I was there. And my brothers didn't like that idea that I was still there, being close to my mother and you know, being her companion from the moment my dad passed. And I just took my dad's place, I guess, you know, in a lot of ways. I was there, I was her companion. And so we had a very close relationship, my mother and I did. And things were still good even when she became, you know, wheelchair bound. Her problem came from arthritis, where she could not maneuver herself. Now for years she could get up from her chair and get to her lift chair, or get to her lift bed, or get to the toilet without a lot of assistance. But to get around mostly in the house, she was in a wheelchair, and to get around outside the house, she was in a wheelchair. So, except for the last couple of years when she was totally bedfast. But those first years were great because we still were able to go and on vacations and go shopping and go out to eat. We had a full life, even though she was in a wheelchair, because she was still able to go. And she had two sisters that were still living, and we would all go and do things, and picnics on the weekends, and shopping trips, and visits to old family members out of town. We had a ball for the first, I'd say, 5 or 6 years. And then they all started getting older. The one sister passed away, and another one went to a nursing home. And it was hard. They were, you know, it was hard. My mother wasn't able to get around very much by that time, and it became not so bearable for either one of us. Can you imagine somebody that's vibrant? Somebody who still has a mind that's very clear, but a body that has failed them. I mean, you can imagine their disappointment. You can imagine the arguments that were caused by the fact that she was incapacitated and she wasn't able to do the things she loved to do. She couldn't get out and garden anymore. She couldn't get up out of that chair and cook these big lavish meals she always used to cook for family. She wasn't able to do the canning and things she always loved to do. You know, get into her sewing room and sew. You know, there were just so many things that she gave up whenever she became totally dependent on others. And I tried to remember that because I loved her dearly. But there were times that it was trying. There were times when we argued because she stayed very opinionated and wanted things done her way when she wanted it done. So, but I loved her dearly. She did say she said one day, "You'll miss that mouth of mine. You'll miss hearing it." I said, "I miss it already." The moment she got it out of her mouth, I said, "I miss it already." I miss all of it, the good and the bad of my mama. But I couldn't have asked for any better. She'd have been the mama she is right now, whether I'd been natural born or whatever. It would still been the same mama. And She would have been worse if I'd had kids. Oh, Lord have mercy, what she would have done. She'd have spoiled them right and turned them against me. I don't know what I would have had. She was a good grandma. She loved her grandbabies. I got some pictures here with some of her grandbabies. Yeah, she did love her grandbabies. They grew up not to care so much about her. You know how kids are. They get to be teenagers, young adults. They're busy living their lives. They don't have time for the old folks, you know. So she saw her grandbabies less and less as they got older, had their own lives to live. But she never stopped loving any of them. She never stopped wishing she could be around them. Yeah. If any of them ever see this, I want them to know how much their Grandma Adeline loved them. They meant so much to her. And she wanted, above all, for every one of you to be happy. And those of you in North Carolina, that's one of the main reasons she dragged me to Mississippi. So y'all wouldn't have to have me there those remaining years of your high school and college. I would be out of the picture and the embarrassment wouldn't be there anymore. That's how much Grandma Adeline loved y'all. Good night, everybody. And happy Mother's Day.